Stay Tuned Me. I'm Natalie Takacs.
And I'm Catie Williams.
Today we're going to be talking about tools in the reporting space. I think first it's important to talk about the evolution of tools that we're using today and things that have changed within the industry. So Catie?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this because I've been around the block for a while in terms of tools. And I definitely have seen some tools come in and come out, which has been, exciting. I don't know. Should we name these tools, Natalie? You think that's fine to talk about them by name?
I don't see a problem with doing that.
Okay.
I don't have nearly as much experience with the variety of tools that you do, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.
Yeah, I think to me the biggest, obviously, we use the Gartner report a lot, and I don't want to jump to that because I know that's part of where we want to take the conversation is go kind of in depth about the Gartner report, but obviously there's, for the last several years, been two dominant leaders on the Gartner report, which is Tableau, although it's being called now Salesforce on the report. But you've got Tableau and you've got Power BI. And I will say that from my own personal experience, Power BI, it was later to the game than Tableau. And when I first started using Power BI was right around 2016, 2017, and it was pretty rough. Although, according to the Gartner report at that time, it was seen as a leader. But I think, and jump in here at any time, but I think when I think back to comparing those tools at the time, they had just such different visions about where they were going. But if I look at where they're at today, I feel like their visions are definitely more aligned. But back then, when I look at it and what has changed is, a huge difference between the two is that Tableau was seen as a business tool. It was not an IT tool. And so the strategy and plan from a Tableau perspective was that they targeted your finance users, your HR users, someone that, really knew the data, and they just wanted to get you in and get you licenses and get you started using the tool. They also took such a strong stance on visual reporting. And it's, I think, something really cool and unique to Tableau's culture. I've been to a Tableau conference. Have you been to a Tableau conference?
No, I haven't.
They are quite the experience. I have no idea what they're like since the acquisition from Salesforce, but I hope that they still have retained their culture because they are a really they're a really unique opportunity and they're really fun. But their culture has just been, we're visual. We're not trying to recreate Excel and tabular reports. And I know we want to talk about Excel too during this tools topic, but visual has always been what they're focused on. So if they have customers that ask for, I need better, chart type of, or not charts, but the rows and columns, tabular style of reporting, Tableau has taken a very firm stance of no. But I would say Power BI and the Microsoft team is very different in that regard. They're a very community-led product, which is also really nice because where they stand. They have their voting, right? They have the portal where you can go and submit an idea. But anyway, when I think about their strategies, just from the jump and where it was at several years ago, is you had Tableau going for the business and just we just want to get users. We are going to do that organic, you called it land and expand. And I think that would be the right strategy. We're just trying to get into a department and then grow our business that way. Whereas Microsoft's hey, we've got this whole platform of other tools and capabilities that we're going to integrate Power BI inside of. And you already are likely using our tools at the enterprise. So we're going to focus more on how can you use this tool from an enterprise perspective. And they cared a lot more about things like, how do you deploy the tool? How do you care about source code? When you've got developers, you come up with a process and you're using a development, the software development lifecycle process. And so that was a big deviation from them. But I would say today, I think there's a better alignment. There's still some differences, but I've pontificated enough. So what are your thoughts, Natalie?
Well, so I started using Power BI heavily around early 2018. And so before I started using Power BI, I was using Tableau. I was not a super user by any means, but I remember learning Power BI as someone who came from a business analyst perspective at the time. I thought Tableau was easier to use. just for my specific skill set.
I think that's a common feedback. I mean, I think that's pretty common feedback.
And now I obviously haven't used Tableau in a long time, so I don't know, I can't speak to the experience of a user now, but on my journey with Power BI, I think I feel as though Power BI is so innate to me now. I automatically, when I want to see something, I immediately go to Power BI. I'm like, well, can I pull this into Power BI? Power BI makes more sense to me now than Tableau does, and I think that's just because I've been using it. But
you're also much more familiar with the overall Office stack, right?
That's
so
true.
Like they've done a very
patterns.
good job of following that ribbon, of following like all of the same terminology. Like everything is very consistent,
Absolutely.
which I don't think was necessarily the case when Power BI first came out. Like the user experience was not as consistent, but today they've definitely got it there.
Well, and I also think just the ability to go into Power Query and learning more about that, I think has made my Power BI experience better, maybe. I've just learned...
Probably a more powerful Excel user, too.
Yes, well, and I know that we... Right! To your point, the translation across is so powerful and so important. But I know we've talked a lot about, using DAX versus using Power Query and like kind of the best practice. We've figured out best practices in that. And I don't know that I ever got that deep into Tableau. So I don't know that I can fully speak to the differences, but I do remember at first it being a very kind of jarring transition for me with Power BI and Tableau.
I think the other, again, because I have worked with a few other tool stacks. So I've worked with SAP. This would have been like the 2010, 2011. So business objects. I was a .oer. I feel like I can say that with like a badge of honor, or like
Very proud.
or like I've got like the wounds to like show that like I implemented a .o product and it was bumpy, very bumpy. And what's interesting about that product was that it worked really well with non-SAP sources at the time. But again, it was a .o product. It's brand new, and that is what it is. But a big challenge to just from a visual perspective, I think in 2010, 2011, to handle the volume of data in a visual way. So that was a big, as we've evolved, just like the sheer performance improvements we've seen, the quality of visuals has just drastically improved. I mean, I remember when you would see that like, 3D is like great to have. It's like, nobody wants 3D now, right? I mean, but like that was like a big, like, ooh, this is fancy. It's like cool. you can make charts in 3D. Nobody cares about that. I also have experience with both MicroStrategy and Click. And again, just based on the timing of when those were being like looked at and evaluated, a lot of the struggle we had or faced weren't necessarily the tools and the functionality as much as maybe their native ability to connect to sources. And I think that at the end of the day, that ends up being a lot of, if you can't connect to the source that you're trying to connect to in an efficient and performant way, it makes the tool knock out of your evaluation pretty quickly. And that's what we face. So business objects, connecting it to the business warehouse. And then when we were doing like Click and MicroStrategy, the native connection of a tool like Power BI to SQL, I mean, it's hard to beat. But then again, you've got Tableau, which has no problems with most of those. But that was a big thing. And then as you move to the cloud, that became another challenge of how do you make those tools performant when they're connecting to the cloud. So I would say that's a big change. The deployment stuff is another big thing. I mean, I remember some wacky things we had to do initially to just try to save the code for our dashboard files and things like that. But now today we just don't, because you get to leverage what already exists in terms of like the source code and the concept of that. I think that files like dashboards with visualizations were just a little bit of an afterthought in a way, or it was almost thought that they weren't considered like code. They were just, like arbitrary things. And the number of files we would lose, or, you'd spend all this time building a visualization or a dashboard and it's like, oh, the file's corrupt. Like, no. There was a tool called Excelsius, I think is the name of it, that was in business objects. And the number of Excelsius dashboards I lost just because of this, it randomly like go corrupt. And it just didn't have the same like, I mean, I'm lost for the right word, but it just didn't have that you didn't have the same level of confidence that you would. Like, it's not the same as your, writing programming language, and that ability to trust the UI experience wasn't necessarily there. And I think that's gotten better. I noticed that problem in Power BI when I first got started too, though. Like, it could be pretty buggy, and it's not like that today.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing you spoke about, performance with large volumes of data. And so that's something we've experienced. So like my team is working on building a reporting tool or a light reporting tool that we can have in our application. And we've had so many issues with the large volume of data that's going to need to be processed on the screen. So I think having that perspective now when I'm working in tools that handle that large volume of data and you can interact with the visuals and filter interactively, I have so much more respect for those tools now because I understand the challenge of making that data move within the screen. I'm sure it's very nuanced and I'm very much oversimplifying it, how the other tools are working, but that's something I never really given a whole lot of consideration to prior, is how to make that user experience work.
Well, and I think, not to go on like a total tangent, because I know we wanted to talk about tools in this episode, but it's like the challenge that you face on the visual side is that you don't always know what you're going to want to do with the data. So like if I were putting my hat on that's like, oh, that problem you're facing, Natalie, well, it's simple. Like, just tell me the different levels of summary that you want of the data. And instead of you having to worry about the tool doing it, I could just build you some queries that, nicely aggregate that data. And then you don't have to worry about the performance because I've served it up to you. And it's just like, that's not a realistic scenario that we ever encounter in reporting as data people. But yet that's always what we're met with in terms of, now this is how I will solve your problem, right? And so I remember that. I'm sure that that you have also been faced with that, where it's like, no, just tell me like A, B, and C that you want, and then I will perfectly craft it. And it's like, that's why it is different. And I know no one likes to ever hear that, like, oh yeah, everybody thinks they're different. But like, no, I really just want to look at the data. I want to explore the data and figure out what I need. And I need something that can perform and keep up with that exploration. And yeah, it's tough. And I agree that the tools before could not do that. And now, I mean, it's amazing how many, like speaking of a feature, like the ability to import data into a tool and then use the in-memory capability of that tool versus having to do like a direct query. I mean, I remember when a direct query was like really your only option. And so then you'd be waiting and now, right, you don't have to do that. And there's pros and cons of both based on whatever, right, you're trying to produce for your end user. But yeah, anyway, I know that was a little tangent.
Well, no, and the other thing with that, the in-memory capability versus the direct querying, you do have that element of some people have different refresh requirements. And so different tools can support those different refresh requirements differently. And so I think it really depends on your business sector, your time of the month, even if you're closing your month, you might need to see data more frequently. So I think tools have come a long way in terms of being able to support that on-demand data need, or just to be able to schedule your data needs. I also will pivot just a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about how tools have scaled. So talking about that point solution versus the enterprise models. So I know it's maybe easier to support a point solution than it is to support an enterprise model. But what are your thoughts and your experience with that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it depends, because depending on the size of your organization, I mean, if you're a small organization, does it really matter if you go and have a couple licenses of one tool? Probably not. I mean, right, you can probably still be pretty efficient. But, I mean, I definitely think that I think I'm always going to err on the side that, and it makes sense. Of the software that we sell and provide, like the whole thing that we are trying to get across is that if you can get 80% of your business to try to do something the same way, there's efficiencies to be gained. And so I would say that is likely to be the case, that if you pick a tool and it can meet 80% of your business cases and your requirements, yeah, that there's efficiencies to be gained because now you're not having another team over here that has to support this workflow for another tool and another team over here that has to try to understand and support something over here. And how nice is it that, you know, like in the event that like, or in of the case where like we have a tool like Power BI where I do think it's as simple that business people can use it. I mean, I really do believe that. Sometimes I'm met with challenges of that. I think you are too, where we get some pushback and people are like, well, no, it's not that simple. And it's like, I mean, if you know the data, you can get started in it. And are you ever going to be building super complex things and really complex calculations? Maybe no. Maybe that's not your cup of tea and, you know, you don't want to go that far. But you can do a lot with like YouTube and just trying. And so I do think, you know, like how powerful is it, back to my point, like that you could have a center of excellence in your organization of people that know the tool really well and you can call them from a cost and licensing perspective. I don't know if that's where you wanted me to go with that, but I mean, I think, you know, if you're just thinking about how you manage that overall software cost, that's another place that you can gain efficiencies if you've got one real tool that you're promoting. I mean, yeah, it's hard for me to argue thinking that you need a lot of tools. I also think that the way that tools are structured now, I don't know a lot of cases where they're being sold in a way that makes it really advantageous to you to buy them one-off either. Because for the most part, they require you to either give you the tool for free to use by yourself, or they make you pay a small fee for that. Like, I mean, to be totally transparent, like Tableau still charges a desktop license fee, but it's small. It's not huge. But then, and they have a free online authoring tool now, so that's something else that they do offer. But then as soon as you want to share it, you have to pay. So it's like, who wants to be paying for this tool and this tool? And the more data you add into that environment, the larger your bill becomes. And this, I don't think we're promoting any tools on this. I don't think we're not our intent. I mean, we know what we know, but I do think then what happens is you start to get these bundles if someone is doing another tool. Like, what's cool about Tableau is that now they have Salesforce. And so, and I have seen the reporting inside of that tool. It's very nice. And so you kind of get this bundle of things. And then the same with, you know, Power BI, you get a bundle of, you get Teams, you get Power Apps, you get a bunch of other things, and now you can share for free too. So it's like, and you get a certain amount for free. So yeah, I have a hard time thinking that doing something point versus enterprise makes a lot of sense, unless again, you're like a small company and you're talking about like a onesie twosie type of thing. But I also think that brings up a good point, which is that Power BI is not the job, or Tableau is not the job for everything. And I think I see that a lot where it's like, hey, I'm going to use this to be an application to solve like true functional things. And it's not intended for that. And I do think it's easy to say, I know this tool really well. Let me use it for all these things. And I am just as guilty of like, I want to look at some data. Let me pull it into Power BI because that is my tool of choice. But it is not the end all be all of tools.
No.
So
a couple of things from your points that you made. So with having a center of excellence, the other piece of that is that if you have multiple point solutions, you require multiple different avenues of support. So then playing off the cost piece, that's additional cost when you're looking at point solutions.
Exactly.
So I think that is probably a huge thing for organizations. Is I look at this bundle and I get the comprehensive support with it. Why would I then invest in like adding different pieces? I understand there's different business needs, different reasons, but from just a high level perspective, it makes sense to go with the bundle. And I guess from my point of view.
But I mean, I do also think though, like we are likely have listeners that are decentralized in terms of how their organizations are run. Like not every organization is centralized. And so then in that case, they have control over their software spend. They have control over the tool choice. Then by all means, but I do really think, and I think this is an unbiased view at this point, that most of the tools have really reached, at least when we're looking at like the Gartner top, they have really reached pretty similar feature parity at this point. Like, to me, Tableau and Power BI are like, you pick. I mean, there's preference at that point. Do you prefer this or that? Are you going to see a substantial difference in functionality? No. Can you achieve most of what you need between the two? Yes. But are there some subtle differences in terms of maybe what you want to do organizationally? Yes, I think there could be some small things like that. But in terms of actually like producing visualizations that will impact and influence business decisions, they are both perfect tools for the job.
Yeah, and I think they're both very robust.
Reliable, scalable, can handle the performance. They've got great support. They're not going anywhere. Great investment. I do think they're different in terms of feedback from customers, but I mean, if we go to the Microsoft, like the Power BI concept of the voting, like when we have an idea we really want, we'll like send it around, like vote for this. Yes. I mean, it can be hard to get an idea
to get traction.
Votes. But it is really exciting when you see something. But I think they're on pretty similar release cadences. Investment is being made in those tools, which is great. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other tools. I know we're primarily hitting on those two because they're the ones we're most familiar with. But also important to note, they've dominated the Gartner Magic Quadrant for the last 6 or 7 years. So, which is actually strange. Because prior to that, when I watched the Magic Quadrant and I couldn't find one, I was really hoping I could find one. But there was so much movement in that leaders box. And there has not been that much movement. Like, they stay right by each other. They kind of move up and down around each other. But there has not been a ton of movement. There's been a lot of movement elsewhere and like people coming in and out. But those two have really stayed by each other. So good, healthy competition for each other.
Well, and I think it's also interesting. I obviously had experience with Tableau before I had experience with Power BI, but I feel like kind of around the time I was starting to get into more visual reporting, that's when tools were starting to come up. So you previously had the SSRSs of the world, your very tabular structured report building tools. And
crystal report.
People started to see the value in that interactivity of the data. And then, oh, by the way, you can pull in someone who's not super technical. I think that was that time period was a huge shift for reporting tools when those Power BIs and Tableau started to really emerge as leaders, because I think that really changed the landscape of the reporting industry.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
But I think there's always,
and the technology caught up to like the volumes of data that were being produced too. So,
and I think it's tough though, because people still want that tabular pixel perfect. I mean, this is me speaking from my experience, but people are still asking for, I just want a tabular report, I want to print it out. And I think that might be where Excel comes into play. I really wanted to talk about Excel because I feel as though Excel has become a reporting tool in and of itself.
Maybe before that though, before we hit Excel hard, I'm curious, the tools that you have like Python and like R, that also have very strong visual capabilities, do you think they even compete in this space? Or do you think, no, they'll never even come into play in this nice UI, no code environment? Or do you think that you've got a whole group of people that are like, oh, I can customize every piece of my visualization exactly how I want, and I don't need something like Power BI or Tableau that limits my ability to the settings and parameters through, whatever, like the visual libraries they proprietarily own. Like, I'm just curious. This comes up a lot, so I haven't shared this about my background, but I also teach and run a program at a local university, and it comes up a lot about students saying, because I make them interact with either Tableau, Power BI, or R, or Python.
Oh, okay.
And I at the end of the course, sometimes I say, like, well, what is your preference? And I'm always torn when someone says Python or R for visualization, because I'm like, it's so much more work.
Well, I think I
take the easy button every time. And R and Python are embedded inside of the tools, but it's a different experience.
It is.
It's not like, it's a different experience. I'm just curious, do you think that we're going to see like another camp that's like, I don't want low code, no code. I want full control.
I think a purist, like a very pure technology person, or like more of like the data scientist role might want to dabble in that.
Yeah.
I think the low code, no code
feels not repeatable as much too, right? Like,
and my experience with Python and R is very like small. I've used them, but not extensively. So I've never built like pretty visualizations using those languages. But I think there is a certain type of person that's going to want to stick with the Python and the R, and then there's more of your business users, your people just looking to get it done quick and dirty, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that if I can connect to the data, if I can kind of quickly get a grasp of the data, I'm just going to go to Power BI because I'm not going to want to build a visual from scratch.
Sure.
If I'm someone, though, that is really into the data and maybe building something for my organization or my executives, I might want to go that Python R route because of the ability to customize. Because I know there are some reports that we support that we have to do a lot of like working around to make them look the right way. So I think when you're dealing with something so highly specific, that might be the way to go. But I don't know that when we're talking about visual reporting tools that Python and R are ever going to be up in that like leader quadrant.
We should save this for when we have our guest.
Yes,
I think it would be, because we're going to have a guest on in a couple weeks, and I think it would be
I think that's a great question.
A good conversation to have with him. His name's Mike Moore, so I think he's already committed, so I think we can reveal him. But he is a visualization expert, and he's going to have lots to say about tools and all of that. Little spoiler alert, but I really struggle with how much investment the tools should make in the R and Python space. Because I'm like, are you trying to bleed two worlds together that don't need to be melded together? You're my grammar player. What's the right word there? Meshed together.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, let's talk about Excel because I took you off that topic.
No, that's good.
I can always take a step.
No, that's good. Yeah, so Excel is still
the most used tool of any tool.
It's
probably besides Outlook.
Right.
Maybe Teams. Maybe Teams is used more now. I don't know.
I think Excel is so, and I think they built Power BI taking some of that from Excel. But Excel is so accessible.
Absolutely.
It is so accessible. It can connect to so many different kinds of data sources, APIs, SQL databases.
But that's newer.
That's newer.
I mean, you've always been able to do like an ODBC connection. But like some of the online sources are newer, which is exciting.
That's true. Very exciting. Well, and I just, as someone who has in the past been given, okay, here are requirements, build me this report, 9 times out of 10 would take the Excel that they're using over like a structured requirements document.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people utilize Excel because it's easy to share. You can share an Excel spreadsheet so easily. It's
the barrier of entry is
so low. And it's an interesting conversation that I've seen.
You can start typing in it.
Well, and not to mention the availability of information online. Like we were kind of talking a little bit about Power BI, using YouTube, using Stack Overflow. All these different sources online will help you do what you need to do. So with the Excel, I think Excel was a very early reporting tool that was adopted very easily, especially because people got it with their Office 365. I think that
it is the most used reporting tool. I mean, I don't know where they say that stat at, so like somebody can fact check us if our audience is large at this point, but they say it is still the most used reporting tool.
And I believe it. It's just so easy to navigate, to get to. But then that kind of opens up the conversation of some organizations like to have a really maybe centralized is the word I'm looking for, a centralized approach to their reporting to make sure that single source of truth, that only the right information is being broadcast to the organization.
Yeah.
But Excel kind of challenges that paradigm.
Absolutely.
Where it allows you to connect to different sources, pull in different data. Even if it is I'm manually entering data into sheet 1, well, I can use that into like a pivot table in sheet 2. So I think Excel has really challenged that, I'll call it more traditional view large organizations have had of their data, to allow users to take reporting into their own hands.
I hate nothing more than when someone sends me their spreadsheet.
Oh, I love it. I'm like, let me reverse engineer this. Let me figure this out.
No. I mean,
like as a report.
Yes, no. I mean, I agree that when someone's using it as a tool to deliver like a requirement or something like that, I agree. I would prefer that versus the structured requirements as well. But I mean more like when someone's like, "Hey, I've collected all this data. Let me send you my spreadsheet." And I'm like, no,
and then everybody's but that's a challenge. Everyone's got their own.
And then someone else has one, and I'm like, have we not heard of at least OneDrive?
Right.
But maybe that's just more of my issue is I hate the concept of file sharing. It's got less to do, I think, with Excel. So that's unfair. I'm unfairly targeting Excel there, and I just can't stand that we haven't figured out that, like, why are we all just sending single files? Like, we should be sharing files. But anyway, that's not what this is about. But no, I mean, yes, Excel is still widely used. I don't think we should be trying to deter it, though, honestly.
No, I agree.
I just think it's like best tool for the job. That should always be what we're promoting, and making sure it's very clear what Excel doesn't do well, right? And that like it's not going to do well with a large volume of data. The performance will be poor. When you are trying to share and collaborate, it starts to break down. It absolutely does. It's not the right tool for the job, but can it do like really quick analysis? Absolutely. Why not? Like, can you connect to a few things? And I mean, I can definitely build a pivot table in Excel way faster than I can in Power BI. Hands down.
Yeah.
But I can do a lot more transformations and clean data up in Power BI a lot faster than I can in Excel. But I think that's just because of where I'm at in my skill level between the two.
Sure.
And I love the repeatability that you get in a tool like Power BI. Although that whole window now that you get in Power BI is available in Excel. Right?
Power Query is now.
Yeah, which that didn't used to be. So that's like I said, they keep making Excel better. But I think it's because you're right. There's still this need that we can't ignore. And when you have a tool, this is not to knock Tableau's strategy, but when you have a tool or a company and a vision like Tableau has, where they've said, that's not our thing, that's not our space. Somebody has to meet the need. Somebody has to,
because there is a need.
Yeah, somebody has to say, okay, we hear you. We're gonna continue to solve the problem. But how do you get people to also say, I don't need to go line by line, right, on everything, and I can use a bar chart instead that tells me, like, okay, I really only need to focus on this area because it's what's doing really poorly.
Here's my outlier, not like combing through for your outlier. I think exception reporting is so powerful, and I think Power BI makes it easy and accessible.
Yes, but it's like this behavior change that I think we've talked about before. Our strategy has always been give people both, like have the tabular report and have it complement with the visual so that someone can build this confidence that, like, I haven't taken anything from you. You're still getting what you need until they build the reliance on the new so you can take away the tabular report.
We can trust but verify.
Yes. But no, I don't think Excel's going anywhere. I use it all the time too. But I use it effectively because I'm sharing via OneDrive.
I just use it to do my local
Excel file.
Yes. No, we're not doing that.
I'm taking a strong stance on that.
But I think Excel, I agree. I don't think it's going anywhere.
No, I think they're still investing in it. I mean, man, that ribbon just keeps getting more and more capabilities.
More buttons at the top.
Well, and think about how many people know VBA.
Oh, yeah.
And little sidebar tangent about our industry in construction and engineering. Some of the most powerful Excel users I've ever encountered. I mean,
the most impressive spreadsheets.
Macro crazy. I mean, they could take that and build apps in something that could scale. Powerful. I mean, you just take what you do to engineer bridges and all these other fantastic things. It's is really
Excel made it happen.
Yes.
I do. Yeah, I agree. I don't think Excel is going anywhere, but I think Excel really is a good gateway into reporting. I think people start in Excel.
Yes.
The people that I've worked with that have become like pretty powerful Power BI users have all started using Excel first, and Excel is where they find their love or passion for data, and then they move into Power BI because it's a natural step.
Yeah. Well, and I think again, this isn't really what we were meant to talk about today, but if you like that, if you like being in Excel and you enjoy that step, that's a good indicator that a career in data is probably for you. Because that is definitely like base level foundation.
Oh yeah.
And nobody's saying you have to going row by row by row. That's not what we're saying. But if you enjoy the steps of working through the process of analysis that you can do in Excel, I mean, it's definitely something that was eye-opening for me. And I mean, just me doing my own personal finances, and then throwing it into Power BI, I'm like, oh my gosh,
yes.
And I always tell people, do your own data, find a way to get access to your own data, whether it's your health data from your watch or something from your phone or your bank or whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as it has some meaning to you, it is mind-boggling. I remember, I had a student at the time that did his own. I think it was his bike data, from Strata. I don't know if that's how you say it. Yeah, thank you. I was I don't know how you say the app, but I mean, it was so cool. All this stuff that he was learning about himself, right? I mean, if it has meaning to you, I think then might light a little spark. But now we're digressing again.
Not necessarily, because I mean, Excel is kind of the way that people start to get into that.
Well, and what is neat is that they've opened up so many available ways to connect to the data, which is what it had such a limitation before of getting that ability. I mean, and again, back to Power BI, when it first came out and you go into the data connectors, it was not very much available. I mean, I remember that being the biggest challenge of using Power BI when first getting started was, how do I get connected to the data? And really, any time I needed to connect to a cloud source, it was oh, this is going to be really hard. But you don't face that anymore. And it's not just Power BI that's made it easier, although their out-of-the-box connectors have, and Tableau has the same thing. They have a whole litany of them, and the other tools do too. But the software providers have also done a ton of work to make that easy. Yeah. I mean, not to toot our own horn, but since we sat on the other side, we were we need to make this really easy to connect to our data. We don't want it to be hard. We want it to be easy. We know the kind of people we have connecting to the data. And we put a lot of effort into making sure it was going to be simple.
Yeah. And so with that simplicity, I kind of want to dovetail into another conversation about data literacy. So we talk about tools like Power BI and Tableau and how they're very easy to onboard to the actual tool and the functionality. But that, I feel is just half the battle. The other half of the battle is understanding the data that you're trying to connect to and trying to work with. So we've seen a rise in tools that can metadata catalog, provide data about your data. So do you think that we're going to continue to see this trend on upswing? With tools like Calibra that people are implementing to help users understand the data better. Do you think that's something we're going to continue to see, or do you think that's something that's going to kind of plateau?
I think it will be imperative, but I think it's actually an area of huge opportunity for generative AI. So I know we've talked about, I hate to say that this metadata repository is a bit of a unicorn. I've never seen one in real life. I've never seen one a completed one in real life that is automated, that is kept up to date. But everyone talks about it. I have met with a couple organizations that have a decent process around keeping the data up to date. But it is a lot of effort, and I don't know that the value prop is there. But the value prop of what their process that was in place required to support that. So do I think that the value is there that it's necessary and like you've got to have it. I do. I'm just saying that like the process that I saw was like very time intensive, like from both a people and a system and just bureaucracy, all of that. But yeah, I think generative AI can help here a ton because I think that there is so much to learn from like it can learn about itself that then can be self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, we've started to try to explore this as well. That then you're taking out the human element of like, okay, I've got to go and define what does it mean. Like, I'll take my favorite one because this is the one I always dealt with in my previous role, like staff to craft ratio. How do you define who's staff? How do you define who's craft? And it's like, you ask that guy, he's got a different definition from that guy, he's got a different definition from that guy, and it's like, somebody has to decide on what it is. But that's where I'm saying I think generative AI can come in and help by using the data to come up with what the definition should be. And now it's not this painstaking process of defining that and then consolidating it all together and making it a very natural Q&A type of process to, right? Like I wanted, what is my craft to staff ratio? Now I can ask the question and rely on generative AI. I think that it's going to stop being so manual intensive, long-winded response.
No, what do you think? You brought up a really good point. The manual effort to define data, to define relationships when you're providing data. I think that's an uphill battle.
It usually just lives in somebody's head too,
It
right?
does.
Like it's the business logic that 5 people that worked here since the beginning of time know, and you sure hope that they've shared their tribal knowledge with someone else.
Or otherwise.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think
And getting it repeatedly on paper, so and then as your business changes, hoping those iterations have also gotten on paper. I've just never seen it done. I've never seen it done across the board. Like maybe for a very important piece of data, yes, but not for everything.
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah. It's
everything. But I think we should table that and just talk about in general how you would approach that, because really I don't even think you should be trying to tackle everything. I mean, right? Because not all of your data is business driving in terms of decisions. Like some things are going to be worth less than others. I think that would be a really good topic for us to cover. So
I like that. Yes.
if that's okay. I mean, I think you should share your final thoughts, but
oh no.
but I think we probably need to wrap this one up anyways, and we didn't even finish tools.
No, we
so
didn't.
we probably need to do a part 2 of tools.
Yeah.
And also I love, like, we should talk more about metadata, master data, and data literacy, all of that. It's a great topic.
Okay. So,
but I mean, did you have any other thoughts on the metadata?
No, I just think I think metadata it's a tough topic. It's an important topic. There's a lot of value there. I think it's incredibly challenging to manually keep track of it. So to your point, I fully agree that there's a lot of opportunity with generative AI.
It adds a lot of value, but it's really expensive to do.
It is incredibly expensive to.
It's one of those things that's just like very hard to articulate and calculate the ROI of too, right? To convince someone, hey, we need to all get together on the same page and define what this thing is, because it matters that those 5 people I said that had a different definition, that we're all in agreement about exactly what it was. Convincing someone that matters, to have all the brute force conversations to get there on that same page is expensive. And then again, we're just talking about one conversation. Now you got to go blast that information down.
And then people have to consume it. I feel
yes, and that's
they have to take the time to read and learn. And
but it's not that there isn't ROI. It's just the process of convincing someone of that is what's hard. And so that's why I'm going to repeat myself. I'm excited about what generative AI can bring to this problem, because it will reduce that cost, that overhead that's required in this, and take out a lot of the manual work that just has been very hard to show the value prop for.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think
it's at least an accelerator. Now, from this, in every single one of these conversations, I will never suggest that anything be done without a human overlooking it when it comes to generative AI.
It's a great qualifier.
I should just put that out there as a disclaimer. If I say that, I don't mean that I'm talking about job replacement or anything like that. I just mean, I think it's a great accelerator, and it'll obviously need like a human to still.
Well, it's a gap to fill because I don't think a lot of organizations do devote headcount to creating that data lineage and all that.
They know their data is important, but they are definitely not taking the time to catalog it correctly, understand it, make sure that it's of good quality, that it's coming in. Right. I mean, all these things again that we could.
Technology can come in because you have end users that are validating. Like, hey, this doesn't look right. I don't think these numbers match up, because you're always, and again, I know now I'm starting to kind of veer off onto this other topic, but you're always going to need that element of human like validation. One other topic we could talk about with tools is the low code, no code versus code. I know we kind of touched on that a little bit with the Python and the R, but back to the tabular reporting conversation, some of the tools have tried to fill that space in their visual reporting.
Yes.
However, when you look at those visualization options, you still require some level of developer knowledge to really get the benefit of that. Do you think those are going to change? Do you think there's going to be strides made there? Or do you think the tabular reporting space is always going to be more of a developer space?
Just to clarify what you mean, you're talking like take an SSRS and make it so that you don't need a developer.
Like to write SQL on the back end. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Man, okay, I'm very torn. So I don't think any investment's being made in SSRS right now. I think it's a product on the shelf, and I'm very curious what you think too. I don't think there's any investment being made in it. So I do think, but I know that there's paginated reports. So I'm just taking one product that I know. And so I think that they're trying to find a way to take the model that you build inside of Power BI and give you the front end capability of SSRS to do that inside of Power BI. So yes, in a way. But I do think most of the existing tools, like a Crystal Reports or like an SSRS, or I can't think of MicroStrategy's the main one, and gosh, Business Objects had, I can't think of the name of it either. I mean, they bought Crystal Reports.
I was going to say, yeah.
But they had Webby. It was called Web Intelligence, I think. It was very similar. I think it was called Webby, but they go through a lot of name changes too. I don't think any of them are making any investments, because I don't think that the market is big enough to, who's going to spend on it? Like, I think that's, to me, if I take a step back, I think the buyers already, they know they get Excel for free with their purchase of, whatever. Like, you're getting something, you're either using like Google Sheets or you're using Microsoft. So you already have something, and most of the time you get SSRS for free because you've purchased some type of SQL or something. So I don't know. I would guess that there's nothing in it really for them to make a huge investment to the existing tools. But I caveat that with saying, I know that we're doing something like that, that Microsoft is doing something via paginated reports, which we Innate is evaluating that and looking at that and keeping our eye on it. But
yeah,
paginated. That's a great question.
And so,
Natalie, your thoughts?
Well, I think paginated reports is but I think that is Microsoft's evolution of moving the tabular reporting space to combine the tabular reporting space with the self-service reporting space, because I don't know. And again, maybe this is just my experience in the industry that I've been in, but I don't know that you're ever going to get away from needing to have that highly formatted tabular reporting.
No.
And I know Excel comes close, which is why I had brought it up, but I don't think Excel quite gets there with some of the highly specific formatting that you can do.
No, I mean, just an example of like a requirement, or like when you have like a feed type of report, right, that goes to someone very specific and it's scanned in like a very specific format, right? Or like, we've got like our OSHA reports that are very specific format. Yeah, I don't think that those requirements are going away. I would agree. And that does require a very pixel perfect specific format. But I will be very curious if you can actually end up doing that in paginated reports.
Yeah.
Like that much.
So that
It will be really interesting, the experience for a developer that was an SSRS developer to
use
paginated reports. Yeah.
Yes, I think that'll be I'm very curious.
Yeah,
about that.
well, we did a POC. We should go ask about it and see what it was like. I don't know if we even got that far.
I don't know that we did,
but yeah, the tabular reporting space is such. Obviously, it's not a passion for either of us.
Nope.
It's not what we focus on a ton. But yeah, I think it's like the redheaded stepchild or whatever. I feel like I can say that. I can say that, but that like we're just trying to like be quiet, like we don't want to put on.
Nobody else.
We don't want to put
on it.
I know, but same with printing.
Gosh,
that's like the most controversial topic that you bring up. Like, why do you want to print? Who wants to print? You say that in like a room with these big vendors, and they're like, nobody prints anymore. Who wants to print? They bring up their phone,
right?
And which we do need to talk about mobile, but not today. Let's save that one. But you're right. That's what nobody's printing anymore. Everybody has a phone, and it's like, yeah, but in our industry, we have secure jobs. Nobody can bring their phone, or like. It's not feasible all the time to look at some of this stuff on a device. So,
yeah, I do think that the whole printing mobile thing that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But
is there anything else you want to cover today before we save the other things we wanted? We did not get through enough of that thing. We didn't even get to the Gartner report.
No, we didn't.
So we'll do a part 2, and we'll cover the Gartner report and go into some more like the mobile
evaluation.
Evaluation, mobility, accessibility. I meant accessibility and mobile, not mobility.
All right.
And user groups, we'll talk about that too. So yeah, this is a good one. All right, thanks for watching another episode of Talk Data to Me. We will see you soon.
Cut it.